Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's Weekly Energy Boost. My name is Elisheva, and I'm here this morning with David. And this morning, we're talking about creating unity. This is on the coattails of last week's episode. So if you haven't heard that yet, pause now and come back later. Listen to last week's episode first. We were talking about empathy. And this week, again, is connecting us to that idea of the interconnectedness of all of humanity and how that connection can actually be a tool in our spiritual growth. Weekly Energy Boost is a 7-day spiritual weather forecast where David and I, and sometimes our guests, offer our listeners the most powerful and practical tools that we have learned ourselves and we've practiced over the millions of years we've been studying and teaching Kabbalah. And every episode inevitably offers listeners tools and wisdom that can be used anytime. And this week is no different. I ended last week asking David if there's any time or any situation in which empathy is not recommended, where we should distance ourselves or leave people to go through their process. And I have been waiting on eggshells to continue this conversation with David. So, David, what do you think? Is it ever okay to step back and just let a person go through it and not get involved?
This is one of the hardest. This is one of the hardest things to figure out: when to step in, when not to, when to give energy, when not to. Do you help a person, push a person past their comfort zone to break through their fear? Do you allow them to go through it themselves? What is the right answer? All right. That's really what it comes down to. People always asking, when do you push? When do you not? I think we need to first look at it spiritually. There's a Kabbalistic answer to this, and also practically. Number one is, what do we want the goal to be? At the end of the day, what people need most is to know that people believe in them. That people believe in them. When you know that someone believes in you and doesn't judge you, you're able to awaken your own internal strength to get through anything. So we need to start there as a foundation. Because I think a lot of times people throw advice and they show people, well, this is what you need to do and this is how you do it. But there is a danger that you are either going to shut them down because they're going to feel judged, or you're going to be stealing their process of transformation and they're going to have to go through it all over again. But one thing we know for sure is, do you in your heart believe in them? Because you should not be offering advice unless you believe in them. You believe in their power. You believe in their strength. You believe in who they can become. And that's one thing that we need to find in our hearts first. And the second thing is not to judge them, not to make them feel, or in your own heart, that they're doing something wrong or that they're deficient, not to give them passive evil eye, which often many times we do. And it's very hard. We do it with the people who are closest to us. You think of who just popped into your mind when I said the person closest to you. Most likely, we judge them so much because they've hurt us the most. I mean, they've loved us the most, but they've also probably hurt us the most. And so we already have a predisposition every time we see them. And it's very hard. It's very, very hard to overcome that. But it is our work. It is our work to soften that judgment, to see the good, to disassociate ourselves from what we consider to be bad or good or right or wrong. As soon as people get into right or wrong, you're already into what we call the klipot, the shells, the negative shells. You're already in the what's called tree of knowledge. You're already lost. Right or wrong doesn't matter. All that matters is connection to the light force. When you are connected to the light of the Creator, everything works out. Everyone's right. Because right and wrong, it all depends on perspective. It all depends on where you come from. So there is no one truth. The only truth is that there is a creator, your creator for everyone in this world. And this is an endless force of energy, and our job is to have affinity of form with that. To the extent that we do that, the darkness disappears. This is all we know. This is the only thing that is real. Everything else is just a bunch of, a bunch of stuff that we all made up to feel good about ourselves and just get by day to day. The only thing that exists is the light of the Creator and our connection to it. So I would say these two things are very important before you can even consider getting involved in someone's life. The second thing I'll tell you is, and I don't know what your batting average is on this, but none of us do it perfectly. I have to take a step back and ask the Creator, what should I do? What should I say? When should I do it? When should I say it? And one of the things that I'm trying to make practical is, after asking the Creator that question, trying to tap into what is the Creator telling me, to know that it is the Creator talking to me and not my own garbage. And I trial and error that. Basically, I will feel something, I will wait, I will see that there's a moment to say something, and I will say it. And if I see that energetically this works out and the person grows from it independent of me, meaning they can grow, and even if I step away, they're good. The problem is when you step away and they fall. That's the problem. That's the problem with any type of seminar, session, or spirituality, and we're guilty of this, where the only way they grow is if they're constantly fed by you. Energy. That's a problem. We need to hand people the tools to be self-sufficient. And that's part of the advice that I know my advice is coming from the light of the Creator when someone becomes self-sufficient, at least 1 degree more as a result. It doesn't require constantly coming back to you and asking the same thing over and over again. And we should meditate on that because we like people liking us and needing us. That's our problem. We like people coming back, especially the rescuers and the saviors and the service people. The plumber leaves your house and secretly hopes your toilet overflows again. Secretly, you think he's sitting there meditating on your toilet, saying, gosh, I hope I never have to come back here. The guy would be out of work. He wants to come back. So he fixes it, but he's also meditating that it doesn't, there's a fine line. There's a fine line.
Well, what's interesting to me, and this kind of goes back to the foundations of the wisdom of Kabbalah that we try to share snippets with every week on Weekly Energy Boost, is that we were all, when the whole physical reality came into place, the Big Bang, et cetera, and so forth, before the Big Bang, right, and this is something that Kabbalah and science agree on, is that everything was one, that there was nothing and everything all at once. There was no fragmentation. There was no separation, no differentiation. Use all the words, all the fancy words that you know. And part of the purpose of this physical reality is to go back to that unity and to go back to that oneness. And the Kabbalists talk a lot about the illusion of separation between us. That, so I guess now it's sort of cliche, but right, like, on the inside, we're all the same, right? This is something that we try to teach our children, that everybody is the same, but maybe on the outside we look different. And Kabbalah takes it a step further and says, we are all essentially cut from the same fabric. We are all literally part of the original soul of humanity. And part of our work in the physical reality, part of our spiritual growth, and one of the indicators of our spiritual growth is that we break those barriers. We no longer see, or we see less of, the separation and the fragmentation between us and other people. And that's one of the biggest pleasures of that force called the opponent, that force, that voice inside of everybody's head that tries to point out what's wrong with the other people, what's different, why you shouldn't accept them, why they don't deserve your attention or your love. That force is really there to perpetuate the perception of separation. The soul, and this is something that we often talk about, being able to see with the eyes of the soul, to see what's unseen. If you would just see the soul, you would see that everybody's soul is basically made of the same light, that same spark as everybody else's spark. So when we talk about creating unity, the first frame of reference or the first point of operation is looking for what we have in common rather than what distinguishes us. That anytime you're looking at factors that separate or differentiate us from anybody else, you know that's not the voice of your soul. You know that that's not your true self. And that's one of the guidances I actually give people when navigating difficult conversations or confronting people, is that whatever you hear, it happened to me actually this past week. Somebody was dealing with a difficult, obviously repetitive situation with someone where they're feeling this person is sort of forcing them to do something. They're jealous of them. It's just all this stuff came up. And she was saying, well, what does she want from me? I just have to ask her, what does she expect from me? We went over it again. That's your soul. It doesn't really care what she expects from you. Your soul really just wants to connect and to feel connected and to experience that unity. So what is it going to take to break down those barriers? And the answer to that question was finding what they share, what do they have in common, right? They're both in pain over something. The truth is that they both love these kids very much. And from that shared space, that which unifies them can eliminate that which separates them. That's really the focus. And we talked last week about how when you get together with a group of people and you pray with them or you meditate with them, there's always going to be somebody in that group that has unlocked the gate that you're struggling with. So it's as though you complete one another, that you're no longer judged for your shortcomings or your failings. You're judged as a whole and complete light. And the same thing goes when we're working with those interpersonal struggles between us and other people, that if we can find what unifies us, what we have in common, we remove the judgment that goes between us. It's again that conversation between sympathy versus empathy, right? If you're looking for the common ground, you're operating from empathy. If you're looking at what even if you're able to say, and this is something that as a, I don't know, you want to call it coach, mentor, whatever, that we have to be really careful of, is saying, I've been through that. I've been there. I know what you're going through. Believe it or not, again, that creates a power dynamic that didn't exist before. Empathy says, I feel you. I know what you're going through. I'm here for you. And sympathy says, I've been through it already and you'll be fine, which is not a very connected and, what's the word? There's another word for it. Unified. Let's use the word unified. That's not a very unified starting point.
And what I'm thinking about as you're talking, I think what most people think about is how. Mm-hmm. How do I do this? This is because at the end of the day, it all sounds nice until we learn how. And one of the most underestimated ways of manifesting anything is to know that as soon as you set a goal, as soon as you set up your internal desire and you coalesce your desires strongly into one direction, the entire universe begins to work together to deliver this reality to you. Often when people say, well, let's say in your example, I want to be able to have more empathy. Well, why? Because by doing so, I feel more connected to people. I then have time served for a process that I have to go through, so I don't have to go through it myself. There's a lot of benefits to this empathy. I get closer, I have more intimate relationships, which we all want to feel closer together. I want this. As soon as you ask for that over and over again with intensity, every situation that is necessary for you to practice empathy will come up to the surface. So oftentimes when you make a commitment to change something, all the opposite occurs. As soon as you make a commitment to be in a long-term committed relationship, to commit and settle down, all the relationships that are unavailable start to come to you. And that's the irony. But wait, I just asked for the opposite. Well, what you asked for are situations to help bring up the sludge and the negativity that is holding you back from achieving that goal. Because remember, there's a reason why you haven't gotten to your destination. There's something that's holding you back. So the minute you set a goal, what that goal does energetically is it brings up to the surface all the dynamics that have been holding you back. So don't be afraid when you ask for light and then you get darkness. This is the process. This is the process. The process is you will be shown your limitations when you ask for the unlimited.
Well, it's like going back to the plumber, right? Yeah. That when you have a leak in your house, I mean, not in my house, but when someone has a leak, you bring someone in to look for the source of the leak, right? You're not interested in somebody who can make a thicker ceiling so the water won't reach you. You want to get to the root of it. So when you ask for that energy, that light, whatever David was saying before, you don't just want a Band-Aid on the obstacle in front of you. You want to find the exact pipe or sealant or whatever has cracked and is causing the chaos in your life. You don't get upset when the plumber finds it. You are excited when the crack reveals itself. In that same way, you want to approach the desire to, when you see the sludge coming up this month, the goal is to actually be excited, right? You can only cleanse that which you find. You can't cleanse that which you can't find. And it reminds me, actually, I don't know, I'm sure you've had situations.
This goes back to what we said last session, which is when it comes up, you got to feel it. Because people say, oh, it's coming up, I don't want to deal with this right now. And you become busy. You get busy and you go to your safe zone. So let's also make sure it's coming up. Oh, feel it. Feel it, don't react to that.
Right. And the Kabbalists actually say it's important this month, every day, to dedicate time to proactively go there. Sometimes it's difficult, and I'm sure that many of our listeners right now can relate to this, especially in the month of Virgo when we're focusing on doing this deep spiritual excavation. Sometimes you'll be going about your life, your day, and there's an eruption of sludge. And it's kind of like, whoa. What am I supposed to do with this now? The Kabbalists talk about, yes, you need to heal it to feel it, but dedicating time every day in this month to proactively go back and reconnect to those times where we've disconnected. And maybe it's worth breaking it down, apropos unity in this week's episode, to talk about there's two kinds of connection, two kinds of unity that the Kabbalists talk about. There's unity between us and other people, and there's unity between us and the light force of the Creator. So I actually work on two separate avenues, which of course are connected, but they seem distinct and separate. I want to work on removing the barriers and the blockages and the space between me and other people, me and not only the people I love, but also me and the people I don't like. Diminishing that perception of separation and difference between me and the people I love and the people I don't love, and also removing the space between me and the light force of the Creator. So David, maybe we can spend a couple minutes talking about ways to go about both, because when you're working on one, you're also working on the other. And the end result, by the time we come to Rosh Hashanah, September 15th, we have grown closer to the light in other people and closer to the light as the source.
Okay, well, I think it's as simple, and it's always simple, folks. It's always simple. It's not complicated. Someone texted me recently, what do I got to do to prepare for Rosh Hashanah? And I asked him the question, what are the 3 attributes about yourself that you really crave to improve? And so he said, I want to be better this, better that. He mentioned 3 things. Then I said, well, what does your destiny look like if you had those 3 attributes? Then he explained all these beautiful things, right? He tapped into it. And so all we have to do is make a decision. What is the 1, maybe 2? I think 3 is even too much.
Well, I usually tell people I should be able to wake you up in the middle of the night and you tell me the 3 things you're working on right now. Like it's so much in the forefront of your mind at all times.
You nailed it. It's amazing how people are not clear about what it is they want at any given moment in any area of life. Because I have so many of I do one-on-one sessions for people in career mastery and spiritual work in their careers and prosperity. within the first 30 seconds, I'm asking them, what is your goal and what do you want? Give me a number. Give me a financial number.
They know what they don't want, but they don't know what they want.
That's right. People, when I say, how much money do you want to make?
More than I made last year.
If I even can get that, that would be great. If I can get even a 20% more than last year, that's great. That's a number. We're making things finite. People are afraid to make things finite. And it's about micro wins. Every day have a micro win in whatever you're working on. Because the light of that win opens up and gives you strength for the next win. Do not try to boil the ocean with your spirituality. Micro wins are ultimately where you get to where you need to be. And celebrate the micro wins. Look for them. Ask for them. What's a micro win? What's a micro win? A micro win could be, right now, you mentioned this, I think, last week. You walk into a coffee shop to get your coffee, and you just look at the barista and you meditate on them and say, I wonder what they're going through. I wonder what they're feeling. I love doing this on our Zoom calls. When we have classes, I tell people to come on camera, because one of the ways I prepare for classes is on Zoom classes. I'll tell you how I prepare for in-person, but Zoom, I come on 5 minutes before the class and I look at random faces. I see who jumps out at me. And, there's somebody there and they're waiting for the Zoom to start and they're sitting there and they're just kind of walking around their room and they're putting this here. And you're watching them in their home, like you're spying on them almost. I mean, that's probably a bad word to use, but like you're watching them before the course starts. And I'm meditating. What is this person going through? What are they feeling? And when I ask this question, you start to see things and feel things. And every one of us has this power. We just don't know it. Ask, what is this person going through? That's a micro win, because what you've just done is you've made effort towards empathy. If empathy is your goal, you just made effort and you won. Because
you're eliminating the space between you and that other person.
And me and that person. And obviously you can't, when you have 300 people in a Zoom room, you can't do that with 300 people, but you take a sample size of 5. And the 5 that the creator shows you actually relates to all 300. And this is why when people leave these Zoom classes, they say, I felt you were talking to me. But I was meditating on just 5 people.
Or the person that you end up calling to do the workshop, you get 50 people writing in the chat.
Correct.
That's me. I'm going through the same exact thing right now. I needed that. Thank you so much.
Correct. And then you get the person who comes up and actually the workshop totally goes south. It's a total drain. And they're just talking about themselves and people are eye rolling. People are eye rolling. That's a powerful workshop too.
Never happened with me.
Well, let me tell you, when it does happen, and it will, and I want people to relate to this, because it's not just about that one person who's heckling, or that one person who's making it about them, or you're in a live class with 300-400 people, and there's one person that's just like asking all the questions, or there's one person who's bothering you at a table or sitting next to you. You have to know there's spirituality in that. There's even more powerful.
The creator put them there as much as the creator put your soulmate in your life.
100%. And what people don't know is that there's 2 ways to grow your soul. It's called chesed and gevurah. There's the Kabbalah say that through chesed, which is through mercy, and that's the times that we're inspired. And then there's through gevurah, which is judgment. And for example, like there's souls that come from these 2 realms also. It says that Moses' soul came from the path of chesed. And it says, like, for example, Rabbi Akiva, who was a great, great sage, the teacher of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, the author of the Zohar, he came from the path of what's called gevurah. And what Moses saw in a vision is he said, I see a soul that is even a higher soul than mine. Rabbi Akiva, why am I the one that's being a channel for the Old Testament, for the 5 books, which is kind of the source of all spirituality in the world in some ways? And he said, the Creator said to him, don't worry, your job is to do this, and his job is something different. But what Moses said is the soul that came from gevurah, which is the judgment, the harshness, was a higher soul. And what we know is that anything a person goes through from the side of gevurah, from a side of when it's difficult and ugly, will grow you more than anything that comes from the side of chesed, which is inspiring and feel good and supportive. But we need both.
Yeah.
We need both. So when you have a workshop and the workshop goes flawlessly and everyone's clapping and crying and they feel inspired, it's not as powerful as when the workshop is making your eyes roll, you're sick of it, and you just want to get off the Zoom.
Alrighty.
All right.
So that's connecting you and other people. Very, very easy. I want to say easy, simple strategy to close the space between you and other people. When it comes to us and the light force of the Creator, why should there be any space? And this is something, basically, at the end of the day, this is all Kabbalah talks about. If you really get down to the nuts and bolts of it, the way to create more unity between me and the light force of the Creator, Spirit, universe, whatever you call it, is to act like that force. And the way that you track down those moments in the past year where you have separated yourself from that force, from that energy, from your source, is to identify all of those behaviors, like we said before, those 3 things that separate, that are not, that you do, that are not light-like, that are not kind, that are not compassionate, that are not generous and giving and loving. The light is an endless force of giving and sharing. So every time you engage in something that is the opposite of that, you create lack of affinity, lack of unity with that force. We say it very succinctly in our Kabbalah 1 courses. You want to reveal the light, act like the light. You want to reveal goodness, share goodness. You want more respect, be respectful. And that is a foolproof way to go over the past year and identify the way that you've created darkness in your own life. Because remember, the sun doesn't stop shining. We may have clouds or trees above us, or we may be under a roof, but the sun itself doesn't stop shining, and the light force, the Creator itself, doesn't stop shining. So as you look over the past year, you're looking for all of those moments where you were not like source, like the light force of the Creator. But what's really interesting about focusing on it that way is that then you're also able to identify all of the ways that you created space between you and other people. Because anytime you are not light-like with others, you're not only creating space between you and the Creator, you're creating space between you and others. And to me, that is a really compact, succinct way to focus your spiritual work this month, at taking time every day to identify the moments in the past year where you've created space between you and other people, where you've created lack of affinity, lack of unity between you and the light force of the Creator, to feel that pain, right? We talked about it last week. We talked about it this week. You have to feel it to heal it, to take responsibility for creating the disconnect. And by doing that, you replace that disconnect with connection, whether it's between you and another person or between you and the light force of the Creator. David, you want to wrap it up?
So we have 11 days before Rosh Hashanah, and I want, as a final word for everyone to be, we talk about the work, we talk about the effort we all need to make a connection with other people and ourselves and our Creator. Just always balance it out with not being too heavy about it all. Always make sure that you're ending on a lighthearted note, that you're not getting stuck in the mud. You're not miring yourself, because when you start to work on the negativity, you get affected by the negativity, and it can drag you down. So you have to just be careful. That the most important thing is to enter this new destiny, this new soul, with happiness and acceptance. Do as much work as possible. Make sure you shift your consciousness to happiness, to acceptance. Be lighthearted. Somebody asked me, and we'll close on this, somebody asked me in my questions on Instagram, I'm doing all this work and I'm really working on myself, really going deep and deep, and I still haven't met my soulmate. And there was this energy that there was so much work she was doing, which was actually getting her sad and depressed. And I said, if there's a man you're looking for, I said, men love happy women. Men love happy women. Obviously, I just made a point, women love happy men and all those, but I said, just remember, the man you're looking for is looking for a happy woman. So do the work, but make sure you step out of the work and connect to your higher self, to your happy self, to your appreciative self, without all that negativity. Learn how to separate the two. So that'll be the final point I would say as we enter. And
another example of closing space between you and other people, even bringing your soulmate closer to you, is a form of creating unity.
That's right.
Weekly Energy Boost is available on all podcast platforms YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We invite you to visit our website, weeklyenergyboost.com, where you can find our archives and read about all the people and things we think are interesting for our listeners to know. We'd also love if you could click our website, click the donate button on our website and support our podcast and continue to like, rate, share, and review. And we'll see you next week on the Weekly Energy Boost.